Somewhere, right now, in this very instant, a version of you is living the exact life you're straining toward. And for him, it isn't a triumph or a breakthrough. It's just Tuesday. It's so woven into his days that he's stopped noticing it. The same way you never notice the ground holding you up. That man isn't a hopeful projection of some far-off future you have to earn your way toward. He's not waiting at the end of a long road. He's real, right now, every bit as real as the chair beneath you. And tonight, I want to point you toward the door into his life, because it's been unlocked the entire time. Let's start not with method, but with a different picture of the world, because everything else depends on getting this part right. Your five senses hand you a world that feels heavy, gradual, and orderly, where cause always comes first, and effect trails long behind. You've been trained since birth to treat that world as the bedrock of reality. But it isn't the bedrock at all. It's the reflection. The true source is something behind it. Imagination, not daydreaming, not idle fantasy, but the actual living medium out of which everything visible is constantly being poured. Blake put it simply: imagination is the real and everlasting world, and the physical universe is merely its dim shadow. Don't hear that tonight as a nice turn of phrase. Hear it as an engineering diagram of how existence actually works. What you see is the echo. What you imagine is the source making the sound. And from that comes a claim that might feel almost scandalously generous. The thing you want already exists, not as some blueprint you have to build from scratch through years of grinding effort. Not as a prize you finally deserve once you've proven your worth. It's already there, whole, complete. One reality among a limitless field of realities, a dimension larger than the physical one, holding every possible experience simultaneously, none of it queued up waiting to be manufactured. Which means your actual job was never to construct anything, it was to choose. You're not collecting parts to piece your dream together brick by brick. You're picking it out of a reality where it's already standing finished, and then lining yourself up to match it. Let me ground this in something tangible, because abstraction alone won't hold. Imagine, not as a hypothetical, but as a fact, every version of your life running in parallel right now. The you whose career has already taken off. The you whose body already feels strong and unburdened. The you already settled into the love he'd been longing for. Every one of these is genuinely real, fully assembled, existing in the timeless now of awareness. The only thing that determines which one shows up in your daily experience is a simple, quiet question. Which one are you currently being? Which one are you claiming, through the feelings you carry out of habit, as your own identity? The tool for making that choice is imagination, used with intention, not vague wishing. It's the faculty by which your awareness reaches into that field and grabs hold of one specific reality. When you picture your wish already fulfilled, and you do it with such vivid sensory detail and such honest feeling, that it stops being a scene you're viewing and becomes a place you're actually standing in. You haven't invented a single thing. You've simply tuned yourself into a frequency that was already broadcasting. Picture an old-fashioned radio, the kind with a dial. The song you're after is already playing somewhere in the airwaves. The station never stopped transmitting, whether you're tuned in or not. Turning the dial doesn't produce the music. It just moves you into position to hear what was already there. Feel that small, deliberate twist in your fingers. That's what assuming the wish fulfilled actually is. And this is exactly why feeling outweighs mental imagery every time. A picture without real feeling behind it is like a dial parked near the station but not locked onto it. You get flickers of clarity, then static returns. Feeling is what locks the signal in completely. Not performed emotion, not something you force onto yourself, but the quiet, settled, in-the-body certainty of already being the person for whom this is simply how things are. Once that settles in, the tuning is complete. You've claimed the reality, and the outer world, which does nothing but mirror what consciousness has already decided, begins its slow process of proving it out. Now let's deal with the thing that always makes the rational mind bristle: time. In everyday experience, time moves in a straight line. The future hasn't arrived. The present is happening now. The past is locked away and finished. This feels so absolute that questioning it seems ridiculous. But that linear march belongs only to the shadow world, the world of effects, the world your senses describe to you. It has no jurisdiction over the world of imagination, the deeper source from which the shadow is even cast. In that realm, every state coexists in one unbroken, standing present, a now that simultaneously holds everything physical life labels as past, present, and yet to come. This isn't philosophy for its own sake. It has one entirely practical implication, and I want you to see it with total clarity. When you assume the feeling of your wish already fulfilled, you're not planting a seed for some future event that will eventually sprout. You're stepping, right this second, into a state that already exists inside the eternal present, the only dimension that actually matters. Your desire isn't on its way, it's finished. All that remains is for the physical world, which always trails behind consciousness, to catch up and confirm what has already been claimed. This is the true meaning of living from the end, not waiting on an outcome, but already occupying, in the standing now, a place where it has already happened. I want to be blunt here, because good, sincere people try this and see nothing move, and they deserve a real explanation. There's a massive gap between wishing for something and assuming the feeling of already possessing it. This isn't a small distinction. Once you see it, it's obvious. Wishing keeps the desire at a distance. By its very nature, it says, I don't have this, and I want it. So every act of wishing, no matter how heartfelt, quietly reinforces the absence of the very thing you're wishing for. It's an honest confession of lack, repeated so often, it becomes solid. Living from the end operates completely differently. It declares, this is already true. It doesn't pretend the outer world has caught up yet. It simply refuses to let that outer world dictate the inner state. It steps into the mindset of someone for whom the desire has stopped being a desire at all, because it's already been received. So if you've visualized, if you've spoken affirmations, and nothing has come of it, be honest with yourself about which of the two you were actually practicing. Were you watching a mental movie of your wish, while quietly still feeling its absence underneath? Were you saying the words while your real conviction stayed anchored in doubt? That's wishing dressed up in manifestation's clothing. And the fix is never more repetition of the same wishful thinking. The fix is genuinely crossing over into feeling the state as already, truly yours. The old teaching to pray without ceasing is, I think, almost always misunderstood. It's not an instruction to mumble requests all day long. Read correctly. It's describing an ongoing inner stance, a feeling carried not just during set-aside practice time, but sustained quietly throughout your whole day, that what you want is already in your possession. That sustained feeling is the actual creative work, and it has to be maintained across whatever gap separates the inner shift from its outer confirmation. A gap that closes quickly sometimes, and takes longer other times, but is never evidence that the principle has failed you. This is where detachment becomes crucial, and I want to define it precisely, because people mistake it for indifference. Detachment isn't the absence of wanting, it's the absence of anxious surveillance, that constant checking of the outer world for proof, which itself broadcasts exactly the lack you're trying to move away from. Be still and know. That stillness isn't passivity. It's the calm assurance of someone who has done the internal work and no longer feels compelled to keep verifying it, because he understands that verification was never how growth happens anyway. You don't dig up a planted seed each morning to inspect its roots. You water it and trust the same law that governs every living thing, seen and unseen alike. when you genuinely know your desire has already been received in the dimension where reception actually occurs, the anxious checking doesn't need to be suppressed. It simply stops being necessary. The entire relationship between you and your desire shifts. Longing gives way to a calm, certain knowing, and from that knowing comes something remarkable. You become, in Neville's own phrase, impervious to discouragement. Not because circumstances stop showing up to test you, but because you've finally understood circumstances for what they are: shadow. And a flickering shadow no longer rattles someone who has stopped confusing it with the actual light. Let me clear up a misunderstanding that always surfaces here. The idea that this teaching asks you to go slack, to sit back passively and wait for delivery. It asks nothing like that. What changes is the character of your action. When you've truly entered the state of the wish fulfilled, not brushed against it for a moment and let it drop, but increasingly lived from within it, you'll find yourself naturally moved to act. And those actions won't feel like force pushed against resistance. They'll feel almost effortless, as if something larger than your everyday calculating mind was steering you. Because that's precisely what's happening. By assuming the fulfilled state, you've aligned with an intelligence that sees further than your ordinary awareness ever could, spotting openings and connections invisible from where you normally stand. This is the real meaning behind "Seek first the kingdom." Establish the inner state first, with genuine feeling and real persistence, and the right actions will show up at the right moments, asking far less exertion than the desperate scrambling of someone acting purely out of lack. A fair worry surfaces in sincere people here. What if what I want is also wanted by someone else? Does my gain come at their expense? I want to answer this honestly, because fear of taking keeps so many people shrinking their own dreams, apologizing for wanting things, careful never to want too much. And that hesitation is itself a kind of self-sabotage, rooted in a misunderstanding of how the source actually operates. Within the larger dimensional field, the reservoir of pure possibility, every state gets selected from. There's no shortage, and therefore no genuine competition. Scarcity and rivalry belong strictly to the shadow world, which is finite and so appears limited. But the source everything flows from isn't finite at all. It's bottomless, capable of fulfilling the sincere desire of every consciousness simultaneously, with no one's good ever subtracted to pay for another's. Light one candle off another candle's flame, and the first candle loses nothing. Its light stays exactly as bright, and now the whole room is brighter. The source behind every manifestation behaves precisely the same way. Even when two people appear to want the identical thing, the same job, the same partner, the same opportunity, what each of them is truly reaching for is the feeling underneath that outer form. And the field holds an endless supply of that feeling, which then gets shaped into outer circumstances through paths neither person could have mapped out in advance. When you assume your own fulfillment, you take nothing away from anyone else. You're simply selecting your version from a field with no bottom to it, and your choosing leaves that field exactly as full as it was before. Which is why hesitation costs you far more than you realize. Every time you shrink your desire to make room for someone else's, you're not being generous toward them. You're only training your own consciousness to believe that good is scarce and must be rationed out. And consciousness always follows the lesson you teach it. So release the fear. Dream large, dream boldly. There's no reason to play small in front of a source that never runs dry. Now let's look underneath whatever specific things you might be chasing. The money, the relationship, the career, the healing. Because addressing what lies beneath those particular wants often accomplishes more than pursuing each one separately. The principle of assuming the wish fulfilled doesn't only apply to outer circumstances. It applies just as powerfully to inner states of being, to the quality of peace, joy, and love that colors your entire experience, regardless of what's currently happening around you. If what you're really after isn't a thing at all, but a different inner climate, then assume that the same way. Assume the feeling of being at peace. Assume the feeling of being someone through whom love flows freely, without strain or worry. Notice how this actually plays out physically. You don't reason your way into peace, and you don't wait for permission or justification before allowing yourself to feel it. You recall, even faintly, the sensation of an evening when everything already felt fine, and you let that sensation soften your shoulders, ease your breathing, relax your face. Held long enough, that atmosphere stops being something you have to keep generating, and simply becomes something you are. Live from these inner states, with the same steady persistence you'd apply anywhere else, and you'll find the whole texture of your experience starting to shift, not because the outer world rearranged itself first, but because the lens through which you're viewing everything has changed. And notice what typically follows. As you raise the state you're operating from, moving out of anxious grasping into settled, quiet joy, the specific things you once clung to so tightly tend to arrive almost incidentally, no longer carrying the desperate weight they once did. That's not disappointment. It's the sign you've aligned with something deeper than any single want, the same creative source from which all your desires originally sprang. Recognized directly, it turns your specific acquisitions into natural extensions of who you already are, rather than emergencies you had to solve. Which brings us to the deepest layer beneath everything I've shared tonight. The point where the technique, no matter how skillfully practiced, finally opens up into its full power. When the truest version of this teaching says, everything you want is about to show up. It isn't just promising a faster delivery of your wish list. It's pointing towards something far bigger. The recognition that you already hold, within your own nature, everything you've ever tried to chase down from the outside. The kingdom, as the old scripture says, is within you. That isn't a poetic comfort. It's a precise statement about where the actual source of every fulfillment really lives. The wealth, the love, the health, the peace you've been hunting out there aren't parked somewhere external, waiting to be discovered. They already exist as possibilities inside the very creative power that you yourself are. Your task was never to travel some great distance toward them. It was to recognize them, select them, and align your consciousness, through real feeling and sustained assumption, with what has always, in the deepest sense, already belonged to you. When that recognition stops being an occasional visitor and becomes the ground you stand on every day, when you live, as a simple matter of fact, from the knowledge that you are the creative power itself, individualized, free to choose from limitless possibility, rather than begging some separate universe for scraps, your entire relationship with desire transforms completely. You stop wanting from a place of lack. You want instead as the natural overflow of an abundance you already know is yours. Like a fountain that knows it's endless and never anxiously rations how much water it can afford to give. That's the real promise underneath all of this. Not just that specific things are coming, though plenty of them are, but that you're about to know, fully and permanently, as the ordinary operating truth of your everyday life, that you already are everything you could ever wish to become. And in that knowing, desire itself transforms. It stops being a confession of what's missing, and becomes simply the natural creative movement of a consciousness that has finally remembered what it is. So move forward, not as someone anxiously reaching for something absent, but as someone quietly recognizing what was always, in truth, already theirs. Live from that recognition. Hold it steady through whatever gap the shadow world needs to close in order to catch up with the state you've already chosen. And watch, with the calm astonishment of someone who has finally understood the architecture of his own experience, as your world reshapes itself to confirm what was, in the standing now, always and already true. What you're seeking isn't traveling toward you from somewhere far away. It's already here, in the only place anything has ever truly existed, your own consciousness, simply waiting to be recognized. Thank you, and good evening. This is Neville Lectures, and I will see you in the next one.